Hello everyone, welcome to this YouTube channel. We have the name Learn Albanian, and of course from the name you can tell what this is all about. So this might sound silly, but this is a channel to help anyone interested learn Albanian. So maybe you've never heard of this language or the country that speaks it, and that's literally the point. This is why we're making these videos, to teach people to speak a language that's not international yet. And well, it doesn't really have to be international because it's a very complex language, and even the native speakers have trouble learning to speak it properly, which is why we've created this channel. So anyone interested can learn to speak this language, but it's not necessary for the whole world to be able to speak it. Still, we're hoping to spread it as far as we can. So today we're going to start with what everyone starts with when they're learning a new language, which is the alphabet. So here we have the Albanian alphabet, okay? So here's the alphabet. So as you can see, I've made some letters red. I'm going to tell you what that means a little later. I've also made some italic. These are really weird letters. As you can see, you don't recognize them from English or any other language. It uses the Latin alphabet. So that's where we're going to begin. The Albanian alphabet was derived from the old Latin alphabet, the ancient one that was used in Roman times, but of course it's been modernized over time. And something special, something different from other alphabets that use Latin letters are double letters, or as we call them in Albanian, shkronja dyshe. They are made of two of the simple letters, and they are pronounced very differently from the two letters, so they're like a combination. They're all the italic letters, okay? So the red letters are vocals. In Albanian we have 7 vocals and we call them zanore. The other letters, the simple ones, are just black and they're not italic or bold or anything. They're simply consonants. We have 29 consonants. And as we call them in Albanian, bashkëtingëllore. Okay? So in Albanian, as you can see, we have 36 letters in our alphabet. I mean, it's not a lot when you really think about it, but still, it's a bit more than the general alphabets of the languages that most people speak. So we're going to go over each letter and how it's pronounced. Some of these might seem strange, even though you've seen them in English, most of them at least. So we'll begin with what in English is the letter A. However, in Albanian, we pronounce this A. Okay, like A as in AH, the same way you pronounce shark as in A. Okay, so this is a vocal, as you can see. Now we have the first consonant. We pronounce this B. Most of us say B to make it easier to pronounce. We add this thing here, the vocal here after it, because if you add a vocal to a consonant, it's easier to pronounce it. However, I would call this a mistake because a lot of us do this and then we omit the when it matters. Like this letter here is a special letter that people often omit. Like it's not that special, it's just one letter like the rest of them. Except since it sounds so simple and it comes so naturally, a lot of people either add it where it shouldn't be added or they forget to add it where it should be added. So this is B. This here is T. Okay? So you probably don't see a lot of words that are pronounced with a letter like this in English. Like for example, you have Celtic. You pronounce it S, except in Albanian we pronounce it T. And here is Ch. In most languages, we write this as a CH, right? Well, in our language, we simply write it as a C with this little tail under it. Okay, we like to call that a tail because it's often young children that learn about this and it makes it fun for them, but you can call it whatever you want. It's just something added to the letter to make it different from the T. Then we have the D. Okay, this is kind of pronounced the same as it is in English, except we don't have the D, it's just a D. Okay? Then we have the first double letter. It's made of a D and an H, so D and H. Except this is pronounced the, like the, as in T-H-E. This thing, the. Okay? Then we have E. In English, this is pronounced E, so it's going to be a little complex for you, maybe a little harder to switch, but is pronounced e. Like, then we have this letter here, which, as I said earlier, is pronounced It's that letter that's usually omitted or added where it shouldn't be added. And even native speakers have problems with this. Even politicians have problems with this. Even teachers. So I don't expect you to learn it on the first go. I mean, it's not that hard, but Albanian is a complex language. I'm telling you, this is not the hardest you'll get. Now we have f. This is another consonant. Then g. So we say g in English, but this is actually g in Albanian. Then we have this thing here made of g and y. This is j. Okay? So you haven't heard this sound before in English, but you may have heard it in any other language that you may speak. But that's how we pronounce it. Now we have h, which we pronounce h, the same way as it is said in words in English. Then we have E. So we say I when we see this in English, but it's actually E, the same way you pronounce E in English. So these two might be a little problematic if you're a native English speaker, but not that problematic if you're not an English speaker and you originate from a different country, which is very likely, but as most people that watch YouTube are American, that's what we're basing this on. So we have E and E. Then we have Y. We say J in English when we see this, but it's actually Y in Albanian. Then we have K, we just say K, L. And then we have two L's. This is another double letter, but it's not made of two different simple letters. It's simply made of the same letter twice. So when we write this as a capital letter, we write the first L as a capital and the second one as, a lowercase letter. However, when we have the lowercase version, we write both L's as lowercase letters. So this is pronounced L. So while this is L, this is L. Then we have M, which we pronounce M, M, then N. And then we have N and J, so N and Y, which we pronounce Nya. Then we have another vocal, O, not O, but O. Then we have P, which we pronounce P. Then we have this thing here, which we pronounce Ch. So this is a rare sound in English, but it's not in other languages, really. Ch. Then R. This is another one of those double letters where we don't have two different letters making up a double letter, but we have the same letter repeated twice. This follows the same rule. When we have the uppercase letter or the capital letter, we have the first single letter as a capital, another one in lowercase, and then when we have a lowercase version of this full double letter, we have both in lowercase, okay? So this is pronounced R. As a child, I had a problem pronouncing this. Maybe it's like something with producing sounds is a problem, but not a lot of people have this problem, so you'll be fine, unless you have like a really thick English accent. So here we have S, and then we have another double letter, S and H, sh, as in shark, Then we have T, which we simply pronounce T. Then we have T and H, T, H, which we pronounce th. So we have the, and then we have th. Then we have U, which we simply pronounce U. V, Z, not X, Z. J. So basically, you say G when you see this, but instead, when you see this, you're going to say J. This is G. This is J. So these letters that kind of sound similar, except one is a little bit harsher and the other is smoother. Like one, you can hear one less and the other one sounds stronger in your head. Like it's kind of something intuitive that we have instilled in our brains as Albanians. But we're going to learn later that these are interconnected. They're different types of letters, but we're not going to learn that yet as we're still learning pronunciation. This is still basic. Then we have Y, which we pronounce U. Then Z and Z and H, which make J. Okay, so here we have all the letters. So I told you how we pronounce these letters. Now, there's something you're not gonna have to worry about in Albanian, which is very different from English and several other languages. The thing is, in Albanian, every letter is always pronounced the same. For example, here we have A. If we say A once, it's going to be A in every single word. Like for example, in English, we have Mercedes. So you pronounce every E differently, and that's really annoying because you have to learn how to pronounce every single thing on its own. I didn't have any trouble because I'm good with languages, but other people do. However, in Albanian, we don't have this type of problem. Every letter is pronounced the same, whether it's in one word or another, in every context. Now, there are still a few words that are spelled a bit differently than they are pronounced, but those are rare, and we'll go over them in another video. But for most words, it works this way. Now we have the next one. Okay, so here we're not going to write anything. Here we're going to go over the history of the alphabet, okay? So, something you need to know is how the alphabet came to be. We didn't always have this alphabet. Well, it all began with an event called the Congress of Master. Okay? Master is a place in North Macedonia, and it's now known as Bitola. But back then it was known as Master, and it used to belong to Albania a lot of centuries ago, but then it was given to North Macedonia, as the majority of the Albanian territory is not ours anymore. It was given to other countries in 1913 and after that. But we're talking about the Congress of Master. This took place from 14 to 22 November 1908. So this is the beginning of the 20th century. Now, what led to this exactly? So I'm going to tell you the full story. At the end of the 19th century, a new movement started in the Ottoman Empire. So at that time, the Ottoman Empire was still alive. It was a really large empire, the largest one in history. And of course, it had many countries under its reign. So these countries didn't have their rights, like autonomous rights. They couldn't do whatever they wanted. They were under reign of one ruler that was called the Sultan, which is what they call like something like a king, but in Muslim countries. So basically, Albania didn't have its own rights. And well, the old Turkish men, the ones that were first in the Ottoman Empire, continued to think that the Ottoman Empire should reign supreme and every other country should be inferior to it. And of course, it would be inferior because they were part of the empire. It meant they were weaker than the empire. However, the young Turkmen, these were young men that had new ideas, decided that maybe these countries shouldn't be so little in comparison to the empire. Well, they should still be inferior to it, but they should have their own autonomous rights, right? Because, they're countries. So, of course, these people protested against the system where the Sultan or the ruler had supreme authority. He could do whatever he wanted. So these people protested against it. And this is known as the Young Turk Revolution. Okay? So the revolution succeeded at the beginning of the 20th century, which is why all the countries under the Ottoman Empire, which had already been weakened in the last few years, got autonomous rights, which meant that they could do whatever they want. They could speak their own languages instead of the Turkish language. They could open schools. They could write books about whatever they wanted, about their love for their country. So it was an era of nationalism, which is why Albania, who had supported the revolution, despite, well, because they didn't know that the revolution would actually bring back something worse than what they had had, but that's a theme for another day. Well, they supported the revolution, and of course, they were quick to try and get as much as they could with the new rights that they had. Well, at the time, because of all the empires that had had Albania under their rule, like the Roman Empire, the Byzantine Empire, and the Ottoman Empire, which was at that point in time, it had gotten plenty alphabets that it used. Like illiteracy was very common, but the few people that could read and write used one of these alphabets. But there were a lot of alphabets to keep track of. And whoever wrote in one alphabet, only people who read and wrote in this alphabet could read that and understand it. So there was trouble with communication, which is why the intellectuals of the time in Albania decided to hold a congress. This is called the Congress of Manchester. In this congress, they would pick one alphabet that would be the same in all of Albania. So this congress lasted from 14 to 22nd November 1908, right? So during this time, they looked at all the alphabets and they tried to decide which one to use, but they couldn't because there were so many. So they decided to leave two alphabets roaming around. The one with Latin alphabets from the Union Society in Shkodër, and the alphabet of Istanbul with Arab letters. Well, Arabian letters. Arabian letters are the letters that Muslims use, and the other ones are more Christian. So they were from the Roman Empire, the Latin ones. However, despite leaving both roaming around, the official alphabet became the ancient Roman one with Latin letters. Of course, it was changed a little, as I said earlier, but that's the alphabet that we still use today, and that's how it was picked. And people started learning this alphabet in schools, but that happened later because the country was in total chaos and schools didn't function as they should, as they do now. There wasn't a single program that all schools used. They all used whatever programs they wanted. Like some of them used Christian programs. They didn't teach science or math or anything we learn today. They only taught their religious agendas. There were schools that taught children Muslim agendas, and there were schools for basically every religion, but they were all religious. They didn't teach anything non-religious, which is why the country later on decided to change this and create one program for all schools. And that's when people all started learning the same alphabet, and illiteracy became something of the past. Well, it didn't really become fully something of the past, but it was less common at that point. I mean, the development of Albania was slow, but it was steady. It brought something, despite how chaotic it was, and in all its history, in all its glory, well, not really glory, in all its history, we can't say that it was perfect or that everything was expected, but it brought the country to what we are today. We're still a third world country, but we're in development. So this is the Congress that decided what alphabet we will use, the alphabet that I'm showing you today. Here we have the conclusions to today's video. Number 1. The Albanian alphabet consists of 36 letters, 7 vocals, and 29 consonants. We call vocals zanore and consonants bashkëtingëllore. Every letter in the Albanian alphabet is always pronounced the same. The letters in the Albanian alphabet were derived from the Latin alphabet first used in ancient Rome, but they have undergone several changes, such as double letters, which we call shkronja dyshe. The alphabet we use today was selected during the Congress of Manchester, an event that took place between the 14th and 22nd November 1908. The aim of the Congress was to pick a sole alphabet that would be used in the entirety of Albania. The century-old reigns of fallen empires, Roman, Byzantine, Ottoman, continue to impact Albania's culture today. This can be seen in the way we use foreign words in our everyday language.